Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larsen. On this episode, we've got JJ Snow. JJ, thanks for doing this.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jess. This is super exciting. Big fan of your podcast and a big fan of our conversations. We always get into some interesting topics, so I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. Well, you've done so many things from the intelligence community to the technology side of AFWorks, and I'd love for you to explain what AFWorks is, all the
Yeah.
venture and the cool stuff you're doing these days. I'm interested how you introduce yourself.
Oh, so as like my formal introduction, I
Yeah, like you
usually
meet
just
somebody
say
at a business party or something.
JJ or Jen, either or. The JJ comes from Jennifer Jean, named after two of my aunts, and so it was less confusing to just say JJ. That way, we weren't confusing me with the two aunts. So that's how that came about.
That's funny. So, but when people say, like, what do you do? What's your answer?
Yeah, I'm a super connector. That's what I do. My passion is connecting people and problems in meaningful ways, and it's something that I really get a lot of joy out of.
Yeah. Well, I've been the firsthand beneficiary of that. Um,
So
so
glad.
uh, let's talk about a few career things. Just give people like some scope, and then I want to talk about generative connecting.
Yes. Oh, super. I'm stoked. I'm so stoked. This is a topic near and dear to my heart.
So let's do like the quick career overview.
Sure. So, kind of a strange, meandering path. I started off as a biology student, went through college, joined the Fish and Wildlife Service for 5 years, was a wildland firefighter and park ranger, loved it, and wound up stationed next to the National Security Agency. At the time, we had some folks that were coming over and we're doing conservation in and around the property, and they said, you have a really unique background, and 9/11 had just happened, and they said you should really think about joining the Air Force. We think you could make a real impact. And so I was offered an opportunity to become an Air Force officer, which I'm glad I took. It was absolutely fantastic. 20 plus years in the Air Force as an intelligence officer. My focus was on counterproliferation, so stopping bad people from doing bad things with chem, bio, and nuclear weapons. Got into some counterterrorism as well. And in my last 7 years, I was very fortunate to have come out to the Naval Postgraduate School, a proud alumni of the Defense Analysis Department, and they allowed me to do some work on deep technologies there. That got me introduced to former Undersecretary of the Navy, Hondo Gertz, who at the time was the acquisition expert down at SOCOM. He hired me on as one of the first employees for SoftWorks, which was a brand new innovation initiative. And he said, look, you speak government, you speak geek, you can translate between the two. We need you to help build out our ecosystem. We need you to help scout some smart technologies for critical requirements we have. Would you be interested? I said, yeah, count me in. This is super cool. So that's how I got involved in the tech networking side. Prior to that, I had done a lot of networking with special operations on deployments where you're in the middle of nowhere and you have to build high trust networks. And I got my first lessons from the Green Berets. They do a fantastic job of something called foreign internal defense. That means you're on the ground and you're coming in as a stranger to a neighborhood. These people don't know you. And you're building relationships that are going to be critical for months, sometimes years. And in a lot of cases, you're building friendships with these people. What I learned from those lessons in the field was how important it is to build relationships that are going to last and that are going to be of mutual benefit. And so a great example was my time in Afghanistan. I had 67 locations around the country I was responsible for, and we were doing force protection missions. And I had no aircraft to get to them. I had no vehicles to move equipment and people around. And so my currency was information and trading support. So if my teams were getting in on the ground and the guys needed pizza, well, we actually had some storage boxes and we worked with the Italians out in the West. And so one of my HVAC techs would get pizza from the Italians and he'd be on a plane flying back. And the people that had helped us get flights over here, they got fresh pizzas and came back in. And so we would do these little trades, but oftentimes it was something that was meaningful. For the pizzas, for example, the people on the floor that were doing all of the air tasking worked incredibly long hours, sometimes days at a time. And they needed a little taste of home. And there's nothing like a burger or pizza. We actually worked with some of the Navy Seabees, and they would bring in steaks on the weekends. So their flights would come in, families would contribute, and we'd get boxes of steaks, and they built a grill. And so we'd all go over there and grill. Some people brought some chess sets, and it was these little, they don't even seem like much, but they're sincere and simple ways to say thank you and to build a real connection. And by building that, you begin to build a network that matters. It takes time. It takes a lot of time to do this. But at the end of the day, when you build it this way, you have a network that's responsive, it's positive, it's benefiting everybody, and it creates these really unique ripple effects that keep going on and on and on. I've seen that time and again from my time in special operations in the Air Force and now into my experience in the private sector.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up. One of our guys at our organization, Child Rescue Association, he was a Green Beret for 28 years. We were having this
Yeah,
conversation of like, sometimes like him and, just a handful of guys would have 500 or 1,000 Afghans, and there's 8 of them, 10 of them together on their A team, right? And this idea of like those little things, like you're thinking like literally life and death situations. And, during
that's right.
during those years, they were like pallets of American dollars getting shipped around, right? But yet it's like, who did you stay and have dinner with when you didn't have to and stuff that like he talked about like making these relationships that he feels like literally saved his life multiple times was like
Yeah.
kind of over investing in the guys and just that level of trust when his like literally life was on the line he felt like had made all the difference. And it sounds so dumb, pizza, like it's just pizza, but
Yeah.
it's more than just pizza because it's that effort. It's like I care that you're going through a bunch of crap right now. I don't know, tell me if you see it differently.
No, that's exactly right. Drinking tea, that was a big thing. You would sit down, you would drink tea, and you didn't get to business. I remember we were working, we needed a forklift, and we were working to get a forklift in, and we were working with a local Afghani company to do this. And the gentleman would come over, and we'd sit, and we'd have tea, and we'd drink, and we'd talk, and we'd drink some more, and we'd talk some more. And it was about how his family was doing, how were his travels, how was his business. You didn't rush through those conversations. You focused on that because it was about the person. And when you put the person first, everything else comes after that beautifully. Um, and this is something that was really critical on the ground because you don't know when you're going to be going through a specific area, and there might be insurgents in that area. We had a situation where we had been bringing in candy for the kids and also some food and water from time to time. It was a poor community. And our guys were driving through, and one of the little boys was doing this as the team was driving through. And so they stopped and they talked to him, and they found out there were insurgents waiting a bit further beyond the village, and they had set up a complex improvised explosive device attack. Thankfully, because we had good relationships with the local people, they knew and trusted us. And they said, hey, we don't want you to get hurt. This is what's going on. Um, I've seen the same thing with another friend of mine, Chip Huth. He was a Kansas City SWAT team lead, and he now works with the Arbinger Institute. Chip's fantastic. He did a great TED talk on his experience of bringing in compassionate policing. So, how do you build as a police officer and especially a SWAT team member a community, an ecosystem based on compassion where you're still arresting people and holding people accountable, and at the same time, the community wants to help you. They're not fearful. It's an amazing, amazing story.
So this is
Thinking,
so funny that you bring him up. So he was my client at Arbinger, and I'm the one who hired him at Arbinger when I was at Arbinger.
gosh, Chip is fantastic.
Um,
Chip is
and then I
fantastic.
went to Nigeria. So I went with
Yeah,
a client. He was like a 25-year SEAL. We went with a Force Recon Marine, a guy from SF, and an American Islamic law scholar. I mean, his parents are from the Middle East, but just a great guy. And we went over for like 10 days and taught this program of like, here's the mistakes we made in Iraq. Here's the mistakes we made in Afghanistan. We hope you don't make those same mistakes with Boko Haram. And
yeah.
what happened is the SEAL I was with told his stories from Iraq, and then I told Chip, like Chip prepped me with all these Kansas City stories. So I told Kansas City cop stories, and
Yeah.
and Eric told the SEAL stories. That's so funny. I
Hey,
had no idea that you knew Chip.
Yeah, Chip's a good guy, and I'm big fan of what he's demonstrating as far as compassionate policing. I mean, the first year that they implemented this program, they recovered more guns, drugs, and money than they had in the last 8 years, and they had zero complaints for the next 8 years. That's huge, and it speaks to when you put the person first and you're building that network, that community. It changes everything. It changes the success of your business. It changes the success of the individuals and the organizations within that ecosystem.
Do you know
So
that
important.
his city manager told us that they had so many complaints the previous years that it was like
Yeah.
350,000 a year just in filing charges, let alone the lawsuits they had lost. So to go from
Yeah.
years of that to no complaints but way higher numbers, it's like magic trick, right? By just like
Exactly.
thinking about people like a real life human being.
Right. The way that you want to be treated. So think about it. I mean, every day we get up and there are a few things that we want. We want to be able to have time with our loved ones. We want to be able to have a job or volunteer, contribute to something that's meaningful. And most often, we just want to have a happy life. And so when you put yourself in the shoes of everybody and you think, what would I want? Everybody wants the same thing. You want to feel safe, secure. You want to be able to live your life, have a positive impact. And you want to be able to be part of a community that means something, where you're giving back and you're seeing, hey, I matter. My contributions matter. That's what generative connecting is all about. It's about bringing those meaningful relationships to the center of everything that you're building. And when you do that, the end results are exponential. And
Yeah.
and we see that with Chip's story. I mean, it's such a great example of what happens when you put people first and you're building in a meaningful way.
Well, I definitely want to talk about this and like all the venture capital stuff you're doing these days. But before we get there,
Yeah.
there's a couple of things I want to touch on. So, for people who don't understand over at Special Operations Command, why
Yeah.
SoftWorks got invented and what SoftWorks does, can you explain that mission?
Oh, yeah, of course. So originally, so we've got Special Operations Acquisition Technology and Logistics, and their whole role is to look at critical requirements for the warfighter. Their focus is really on how to solve those wicked problems and mostly how to keep people safe. So we realized that under the federal acquisition regulation, you have some legacy processes that are a bit slower, and they're designed that way, right? Because you're making large purchases. You're purchasing multi-million dollar aircraft, ships, sometimes facilities. That takes a lot of due diligence. It takes a lot of legal. It takes a lot of paperwork and a lot of money. In this case, SoftWorks was designed with the operator in mind. How can we get the tactical level teams the critical technologies that they need today or maybe needed yesterday? And how can we do that in the shortest amount of time possible? And that's how SoftWorks was born. Originally, it was established in a tattoo parlor in Ybor City, which was the coolest place ever. It was super, super fun to be there. It used to be a club. Winston Churchill had actually stayed there when he was a journalist. So a lot of history. And it was just, it had this great vibe to it. And later on, we moved to a larger facility because became so popular. For the first time, the public had a place where they could come in and contribute to the special operations mission in a way that mattered. Whether that was through hackathons or they were coming in as a private sector startup or company or even a venture capitalist advising us on how to improve our processes. So right now, SoftWorks is that creative, collaborative collision space where people can kind of get involved and be in there and be contributing to something that's bigger than themselves. The technology and the innovation that's happening in there is super exciting. And we had people as young as 13 and as old as 84 that were coming in from the local community and businesses to participate and really just they didn't do it for any other reason than to give back and have a positive impact. We would give them thank you letters, coins, hats, sometimes t-shirts, sometimes pizzas and sodas. And they're like, we're just happy to be here because they knew it was something that was meaningful. And the operators were right there too. In many cases, they were able to see, hey, wow, we saved lives with this. We made a difference with this. Um, One example that I share quite a bit is we're working with the Iraqis, and we had an issue where in the resettlement areas, the insurgents were going into buildings overnight, and they were actually putting improvised explosive devices in the walls. So when people would move in, they were triggered by motion or heat, and it would kill the families moving into the houses. So trying to move through all of those houses and clear all of them with a robot or a dog or even manpower was pretty daunting. So we pulled a bunch of local volunteers together and we said, hey, how could we do this better, smarter? And maybe 30 people showed up to brainstorm with us. And we had one young man in the back. And not everybody used their names because they would come in under aliases. And we didn't care. We just wanted their ideas and wanted them to feel like they could be their authentic selves and participate. And so he says, Bubbles. And I'm like, is that his name or is that an idea? He's like, no, no, Bubbles, Bubbles, a party bubble maker. That's what we need. And the idea was this: you buy a $25 remote control car, you put a party bubble maker on top of it, and it blows all these hot, sudsy bubbles all over, and you drive it into the doorway of this house, and it fills the room up with bubbles that are moving and heat and everything. If there's an IED in there, it goes off. You could do this for about $50 and you could buy everything you needed in country, which means the local Iraqi forces could do this, the Afghani forces could do this, teams in Africa could do this. And it was such a simple idea. But that's what's happening when you openly collaborate with so many diverse perspectives. It was really amazing.
And is there, am I right? Correct me here. Is there also the opportunity for like product companies or people to like kind of who don't know how to navigate the acquisition system, kind of like go straight to the end and say like, is this even worth the trouble? Or talk to me about that side of it as well.
Yeah, so with AFWorks, that was my last assignment, I was the chief technology officer there. The goal of all of the works models and these different innovation hubs is to kind of to help people connect in meaningful ways around the problems that matter most to the government. So when they come in, we're sharing the requirements with them. And in many cases, especially if they're an early stage, like concept or prototype, they're actually collaborating alongside of the operators, the people that will be using them in the field. And so in this case, what we would do is we'd put out like a small business innovation and research proposal. And we'd say, hey, we want you to come in and we're looking for a solution around green energy. So for example, the AFWorks Fusion event that we did around Tyndall Air Force Base after it was hit by the hurricane, Category 5 storm, a bunch of the base destroyed. We were going to build the base back better, and we were going to do it in a way that was greener, cleaner, environmentally and energy friendly. We really wanted this to be a demonstration base that we could then take these ideas and proliferate them across the Defense Department and then also across our allies. And so people came in from around the world and across the United States. They had green aircraft engines that they brought. They had different types of water treatment systems. They had solar systems. We had the Icon team came in with their 3D printed homes. They could actually 3D print facilities, and they did a fantastic demonstration. They also did an amazing network down in Mexico where they built 2 sets of 50 houses for people to live in. And these houses are built using local soil. And they've got a soil scientist that can work with people to do this. It was fantastic. And we're like, wow, these are all technologies that we can now deploy with to help build areas that are either in crisis or build back better following conflict. So in bringing these companies in, we were able to very quickly say, yes, you're mature enough to answer this requirement and you're where we need you to be. No, you're not. But if you partner with these teams over here, the 3 of you will have a complete solution that can then go forward. We did do some of those kinds of collaborative agreements. Or you're really early and you're solving for a problem that we haven't tried to tackle yet and we like it. We don't have a requirement for it. Let's talk about how we get that written or how we partner you up either with the right Defense Department prime or the right team over here on the government side to make that happen. Sometimes it was DARPA, IARPA, Defense Innovation Unit. The big takeaway was in every case, people are able to come in and talk to the individuals that are working at the works models or at one of the innovation hubs and give them more information about how to apply. There's also a team that's just emerged this year called Stand Up AI, Alan Harris and his team. Big fan of what he's doing. He's also a generative connector. He's democratizing access to government dollars for small businesses. Stand Up AI basically pulls all of these government requirements into their system. And instead of having to hire somebody to fill out an application and apply for this grant money, which can be pretty complicated, especially with different organizations having different requirements, the company enters their information one time and then it automatically matches them against every requirement out there that they're eligible for. And with a single button, they can push that, it fills out the form and submits it automatically.
What's the
Huge
website for
savings.
that? What's
It's standupai.com.
amazing? We're gonna meet that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll connect you with Alan. He's fantastic. But I love what he's doing because small businesses, they don't have the time or the capacity to really spend a lot of cycles on some of these extended applications. And this is helping them to navigate that in a way where they're conserving their funding, they're conserving their runway, and they're able to really focus on building their product and meeting the client needs. So I'm a big fan of what they're building.
Well, and you think about like the mission, like, you know, there's so many ideas that the government isn't benefiting from, which ultimately the American people aren't benefiting from because the system just grinds you up like a meat grinder if you don't have that connections, if you don't have the time to wait, if you don't have the cycles to you know to stretch until those payments come through or things like that, right? That's fascinating. Well, so how do you, this term generative connecting, how do you define it and how do you get good at it?
Oh yeah. So I learned from the Green Berets. They are the best at this in the world. The way I define it is you're creating meaningful connections, one person or one organization at a time, that at the end of the day, it's kind of like karma in my book. You're basically creating an exponential result every time you build an ecosystem with these types of relationships. So when I meet somebody, for example, just when you and I met, we start talking about the projects that you're most interested in and, the experts that you'd like to talk or have on the show. And I was like, oh gosh, all these ideas start to come to me. It's like books off the shelf at the National Archives. And what then I like to do is connect you with value-based people that can come in that have either expertise, have access, unique access in many cases, or there's somebody that has an idea from their work in an adjacent sector and can better inform your process or help you achieve that key milestone. At the same time, because they're getting involved with your project, they're learning, they're gaining either information, they're gaining access to new opportunities, and whether those are business opportunities or personal, professional opportunities. And those ripple effects, that connection is now creating a long lasting relationship between those two people, those two organizations. That begins to build out. And I started doing this with the Hacker Network back in 2014. The Defense Department had originally asked, because I was active with a number of cybersecurity groups, if I could reach out to different hackers and have them help us understand where our vulnerabilities existed. And as you might imagine, that's pretty challenging because a lot of the hackers had been arrested in the past by the FBI. They weren't really big fans of the government. So I went into some of these meetings, alone and unafraid. And it was me on one side of the table, like 7 or 8 people and their lawyers on the other sides of the table. And what I found the most important piece right off the bat is really understanding the people that you're talking to, really listening. And so in many cases, I would sit and listen, probably 30, 45 minutes. Sometimes people were screaming and yelling. Sometimes people were very upset, but they needed to share that. And I needed to hear it to understand where they were coming from and what was impeding our ability to bridge that gap, to form a trust-based relationship. At the end of the day, after those meetings, I had 110 people that signed onto a document that went up to the White House, and we basically said, hey, they're willing to help us, and they'll help us through SoftWorks. And so we started working with Department of Homeland Security, and we started having a number of really exciting vulnerability reports that were coming in, letting us know that hey, these are areas you need to be focused on. One of them happened to be an understanding that down in Brazil, they had hacked a mothballed Navy satellite and were using it as a party line. And so they figured out how to wire the comms using some local like dish technology. And they were basically saying, hey, a party over at so-and-so's tonight. You bring the guacamole, you bring the steaks, I've got the sodas, he's got the beers. And this is going on. Nobody knew what was happening, but the hackers did. And so they told us about it. And from that, the Air Force developed the Hackasat Challenge, which has now been going on for 4 years, 5 years, I think. You have teams from around the world that are participating in this, and they're bringing this incredible diverse perspective, a really deep understanding of cybersecurity, and a passion for making a difference, not just for their nation, but for international society and protecting people, keeping them safe. Um, I have been so humbled and so impressed by our cybersecurity professionals and by the hackers that are participating in these spaces because of the impact that they're having. Like, they're game changers for us.
So I want to talk about this because it's such a, all of us are good at making friends with people like us.
Yeah.
Some better than others, but not a lot of people are great at making friends with people who don't have share a background, or who the shared background is hard to discover, right? I remember
Yeah.
2002, maybe, I was like employee number one after the founders at a network security company in Southern California. And my boss was presenting at DEF CON. And
Yeah.
so I think he did like something at Black Hat. Is Black Hat first and then DEF CON, or is it reversed? I can't remember.
Uh, and
Anyways,
there's B
that
side
week. It
too.
was that week. Whatever that week is in Vegas, right? And
Or summer camp. Yes.
and so like um I think it was I think it's Black Hat first, followed by DEF CON. Anyways, he was presenting, and I was just like out hanging in the hallways, but the only other people in the hallways were the other presenters. And so
Right.
I'm some like 22-year-old kid. I have no idea that like who these people are, and until I'm like finding out like, oh, these are like the international celebrities of hackers. This guy's from Germany, this guy's whatever, and just sitting around the hallway, like kind of like wasting time, but also like getting to have these really interesting conversations. And like, um, I guess I was like kind of intimidated by the situation. Like,
Yeah.
these are like, like I hung out with like the skateboard kids who like would smoke weed or something in high school, but like not people who were like involved in crime at the level that these guys had touched or been a part of, right? And it
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
I felt out of sorts at first, until like, because neither of us had an agenda, like we were just hanging out. Like as time went on, we were like, you're able to find out, oh, it's just a dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm
Exactly.
interested in tips that you have for folks of like making connections with people who appear to have very different, or who might genuinely have very different philosophical difference, background differences, priority
Yes.
differences, things like that.
Yeah. I would say, first of all, be curious. Have that innate curiosity and really want to learn. Be open to other insights and opinions. If you go into every conversation like that, it's incredible what you'll walk away with. I have walked up to people from all backgrounds, different nations, languages, all different types of experiences. And every time I'm pleasantly surprised because, first and foremost, they're a human being, and we all crave connection, and we all want to be able to share things that we're passionate about. And so be curious. Ask them, who are you? What are you here? What are you working on? Tell me more about that. Um, I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm also a bit of a geek. So I can sit down and talk to anybody one on one, or three or four people, and just really get into the nitty gritty of something, especially if I don't understand. That's the other thing. Be humble about it and tell people, I don't know what that is. Tell me more. There are a lot of people that will automatically go, oh, yeah, 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 I know. And they have no idea. But they're missing out on such an amazing opportunity to learn when they do that. I love it when I walk into a room and there's a bunch of people standing around. I'll kind of quietly hang out. Usually somebody will come over, or I'll head over to like a small group and say hi. And there's always this, it's just an excitement. I can feel it, of meeting new people and learning, who are you? What do you do in the world? What matters to you? What are you passionate about? And then of course, how can I help connect you and get you involved with other people that I know are going to benefit from what you're building? Um, but I think the big thing is having that curiosity, being open to what they have to share, and then keep asking questions. Really, like, really want to learn, and that has to be part of you. I know some people are like, oh, that's not for me, and that's okay. But you really have to have a heart for learning and a heart for people. and just be where they are, meet them where they are, and ask those questions. It's incredible what comes out of that. And even if you're not well aligned, morals, ethics, values, vision, mission, whatever differences you have, you can learn so much. I mean, it opens the aperture, it opens your perspective on this world in ways that it's unimaginable. Um, and it really helps us to not only appreciate what we have, but to take it to that next level and figure out, okay, if I'm being a good, steward as a government representative, or I'm being a good steward as a community representative or as a national citizen, um, how can I bring that forward, my best forward, to share with everybody else at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about some of the organizations, A Team, and all these different tech companies and stuff. Like, talk to me about what you're doing day to day with this super connector skill set.
Oh yeah, so I'm so jazzed. I'm really fortunate in that when I stepped out of the Air Force, I not only was I well prepared by my time in the military and special operations, but I had these amazing networking skills. Um, when I stepped out, one of the first teams to approach me was A Team, and huge fan. They raised 55 million in stealth in the middle of the pandemic. They have a a fractional builder model that is like nothing I've ever seen. So they have typically the top 1 to 5% of people that they bring in as builders or as C-suite executives that are coming in, part of the CXO network. And what they do is these people will team up with people that they know they've worked with before, that they like working with. So you already have that intuitive understanding, which is key for remote work, right? At the same time, a lot of the talent that has been cultivated by A Team couldn't be cultivated or held by a single brand. These people are highly creative. They want to be experiencing a diverse array of opportunities. They're also passionate about learning. They want to live where they live. They want to work from where they want to work. They want to work when they want to work. Um, and in doing that, they are bringing in this incredible skill set where I've seen teams that have come in and have taken, something like from LifePoint Health, for example. The team there had a specialty clinician slash patient matching dashboard, and they were struggling with some of the challenges on that dashboard. It wasn't working the way they needed it to work. And so they brought in our A Team folks, and we had a gentleman that met with the LifePoint team, met with the patients, met with the clinicians, spent about 3 hours with each, just brainstorming, hey, what are the issues? Tell us what's going on. The original team had told them, oh, it's going to take months. It's going to take a ton of money to do this, blah, blah, blah. Our A Team went back, had 4 people get together. A week later, they had a fully clickable prototype for everybody to test out and start providing feedback on. The ability to move that fast and to have that level of, hey, we're going to engage with you on a one-on-one piece and really understand the problem from all sides, get everybody's perspective, and then put that together into something that answers all of those challenges, answers all of those requirements. I haven't seen that before. It's been an eye opener for me to see people perform at this level consistently across multiple sectors. And that's the other thing, because they're not working in one sector. When they embed with an in-house team and they're working with an enterprise organization or they're working with a startup, they're bringing that understanding from their alternate sector experience in, and they're rebluing that team. That team might be, McGraw-Hill, for example, or Lyft, and they have been working there for a long time. So you pick up organizational biases, and you've got kind of a box that you're in based on that brand. By injecting these experts that are coming in that have worked across multiple sectors, you're opening the aperture on what's possible. You're seeing other opportunities are being used in adjacent sectors that can also open blue ocean opportunities for you. And at the same time, that creativity and innovation that's coming in from these teams, it's not limited. A lot of times you see companies, large companies in particular, are limited to incremental innovation. In these cases, you have outliers that are coming in and they're participating as part of this team, and they're not restricted by the same organizational biases or limitations. they're able to move faster. They're able to move in a way that complements that team and gets that team the win. And they're quietly doing this as part of the team and then bouncing out and onto their next project. But because of that, we're seeing the innovation skyrocket at the same time. So a lot of advantages to bringing in these remote teams, accelerating to meet a key milestone, especially for startups because they can serve runway when they do this, and then bouncing back out to the next area. Our teams keep learning, and we've got some of the best and brightest people out there. Our CXO network, Jess, these guys are amazing. Guys and gals are amazing, absolutely amazing. We have some of the top CXOs that are former C-suite execs, CEOs, SVPs, EVPs, CTOs, CISOs that are coming in that are either looking to mentor, they're looking to be a thought leader, they're looking to come in and advise on a project, they're looking to share their area of expertise to build better business going forward. And in every case, the people that we have coming in, we've got 65 CXOs right now, they are passionate about giving back and mentoring the next generation of business leaders. For the first time, that CEO, that C-suite team can reach out and have a C-suite executive that's been there and done that come in and advise them. And it's not somebody on their board, it's not somebody working for them. So they can share openly and honestly, hey, these are the challenges we're seeing. What have you seen? What would you do? Can you help us? And that has been tremendous. Like, I haven't seen this anywhere else. I wish I had had it in some cases as a senior leader in the military. It would have been fantastic, but I'm sure glad to see it happening now because I think it'll really transform business. And it's also opening up the opportunity for cross collaboration between organizations, which is exciting. So yeah, let me stop there because I can continue going down this rabbit hole for a while. They're doing some fantastic work right now.
No, I mean, we were thinking we might start an AI company this summer just because we'd
Yeah.
already found clients for it, even though we only kind of knew part of what to do. And like, we were really looking at it as like, how can we, how could we potentially use A-Team to fill out everything we were doing? I actually got a call with a couple of the A-Team folks in like 45 minutes.
And yeah, fast, which is awesome.
Um, and what's interesting though is my connection to A-Team is Shane Snow, but you guys don't know each other. You got to get the Snows together.
We know each other. I think we're on LinkedIn together, and I've read some of his articles and books, but we're not related.
Well, I'm a big fan. He's been on the show a whole bunch of times. He built
Oh, he's
Contently into like
awesome.
$100 million company, and now Showrunner just won Product of the Year at NAB, the big camera, Hollywood tech show this year. So, you are mentoring and helping and connecting a whole bunch of other, AI companies and different kind of tech companies and stuff. I'm interested in your decision tree. When you think about who you're going to use time on, because everybody's got limited time, what does that decision
Yeah.
tree look like for you?
So first and foremost, when I have somebody approach me, I always make sure it's somebody that I know and I know well. I have a no jerks rule. That's first and foremost. I work with good people that are making a positive difference in the world, and so that ethical alignment has to be there, and that personal alignment has to be there as well. The second thing I look for is what kind of impact is this project going to have? How many lives will it change? Will it make better? Where will it touch people in a way that matters? So for the venture firm I'm working with, Maitreya Discovery Partners, their focus is on investing in early stage technologies that will grant economic prosperity, national resilience, and a strategic competitive advantage for democratic nations. They're positioned across, Five Eyes partners. They're talking with NATO. They are investing in technologies that are kind of a middleware, if you will. It's interconnecting in meaningful ways that is either boosting existing legacy systems to the next generation of market where they need to be, or taking contemporary systems even further than we thought they could be, and then making those connections across nations in meaningful ways so that we're ensuring long-term sustainability of democracy in this case. So there's a national security focus. There's also a dual use focus. I love what they're building, and they're building across so many different areas, talking to so many different startups that are coming from NATO nations, that are coming from Five Eyes nations. And what matters most there is leveraging the ecosystem to help those businesses connect with both non-dilutive capital, potential investors, and most importantly, potential clients that can help them out. So in some cases, I'll connect them with a team if they need to conserve runway and they're managing a milestone. In other cases, I have companies that are coming from the UK and they want to connect into the United States. Well, in that case, I know a lot of the private sector entities, I know a lot of the government entities, and those friendly front doors are where I can make valuable introductions and say, hey, you really need to talk to this person. They're solving a problem that matters to you. Or, hey, you haven't seen this technology yet, but it complements X, Y, and Z, the projects that you're working on. Having those conversations where I can understand what's happening in a specific ecosystem and then matching them up with either technologies or teams that are really going to make that play, make that win for them. That's where it all comes together. And I love that. That's my passion.
Yeah. So, well, I think there's a few interesting things in there. The first one I was thinking about is non-dilutive capital. This is
Yeah.
one thing that I think, especially for startup founders and CEOs, not enough of us in America recognize the opportunities there. And like, for as annoying as it can be to work with the government, there's also some huge advantages. Can you talk about some of the forms of, well, let's just define non-dilutive funding, and then let's talk about some of the different forms that can be acquired.
Yeah, definitely. So, for early stage businesses that are coming in, almost every government organization has what's called an SBIR or an STTR program. These are basically government grants that are giving you 50,000 to several million in non-dilutive capital. That means you don't give the government any of your equity. You preserve that equity. And that's crucial for early stage companies, especially if you want them to thrive and if you want them to get to a point where they're transitioning to a program of record with the government, or hopefully they're both getting a government contract and multiple private sector contracts. That's the end goal. Now, stand up AI would be one way to help them connect to a lot of these opportunities. But if they're looking at an individual basis, say they are specifically looking to work with NASA on certain projects, NASA has their own small business and innovation research grants website that they can go to. You can also look at other transactional authorities. That's something that Defense to Innovation Unit does very, very well. They've been stellar with that. And that's where you're coming in and you've got an idea, usually more mature than a prototype, may not be fully commercialized yet, but it's responding to a broad area announcement, a BAA that comes out, and that's specifically leaning into a requirement that's crucial for the government today. They've got to solve that now, sooner rather than later. And so they'll pull in, say, 30 to 50 companies, look at those, down select the top 10, and then start funding those moving forward. Another area that we've been talking about recently is performance-based contracting. So performance-based contracting will put a requirement forward from a government agency. And in this case, multiple startups can apply for it. The government agency will then review the startup applications and they'll say, take maybe the top 10 companies. And those top 10 companies will get, say, 30% of the overall performance contract to build a prototype and demonstrate it against the problem in the field that the government is looking to solve. During that demonstration, the top 1 to 3 companies may be chosen to go forward. They'll then get an additional 40%, and that's to build to commercialization. At this point in time, if you begin to bring in those OTAs, the Small Business Innovation and Research Grants, STTRs, so Science Tech Transfer Research Grants are specific to universities. You have to be a university affiliate to use that. If you're able to tap into that specific type of grant, that's fantastic, but not everybody can. You have to have a university relationship to do that. Those all come in at this point where you're moving towards commercialization. And then with the performance contract, the remainder, that final amount, the last 30%, would then be used to procure that item for the US government, which means there's no valley of death when you do it that way. There's no gap for companies to fall through because they've already passed that vetting mark at the middle that said, hey, you are the top 3 that we're most interested in. You've got this. We're going to help you commercialize. I love that approach because often when you see SBIRs, STTRs, the companies will get a phase one, which might be $50,000 to $250,000, and then they apply for a phase two, and they have a hard time getting like a letter of intent or a letter of interest from the government, and they don't make phase two. And then what happens to the company? We gave them an early signal that yes, we're interested, but then they don't get to that phase two piece, and they kind of fall through the cracks. And some of them we really need. I think the performance contracting, I'm arguing that that's a better way to go. We'll see what happens. All of them are fantastic opportunities. And I think if a company is starting out smart, they'll tap into those to preserve their equity. And then at the same time, using that traction, they'll reach out to the private sector with the right people and start connecting there in ways where those marketplaces are approximate or adjacent marketplaces where with minor tweaks, they can have that positive impact.
You know, we went through this year, especially the AFWorks for the Air Force and a bunch of the DARPA BAAs. And there's so many
Yeah.
cool BAAs around artificial intelligence specifically. Like, can you help us translate this, translate obscure languages quickly? I mean, you can just see so many applications for that of, you know, some U.S. intelligence operative or Department of Defense person gets transferred to a new country where they don't speak the language. Imagine having like really good AI for, anyways. There's a whole bunch of interesting ones. But I think one of the fascinating things that my CEO and startup buddies have been the most interested is open BAAs. We've been looking at the Air Force one. We were thinking about
Yes.
writing for the August this year, but I think we would maybe do 6 months at the earliest. But like, I think it was like a phase one was like $75,000, mostly proof of concept. Can you go find some Air Force officer to sign a piece of paper and say, yes, the Air Force would want this? Phase two was like, I think 1.25 million. And then phase three
Yeah.
was like, I don't know, I think it goes up to like 15 million or something possible.
Depends on the BAA, and it could also be for AFWorks. I know we have StratFi and TechFi, which are specific. So they focus on things like aerial agility, advanced aerial mobility. So yeah, you can definitely find those types of projects and BAAs out there. And the open ones are fantastic because they're basically, it's a wide net. They want to pull in as much
Yeah, it was
goodness
like,
as they possibly.
come tell
Yeah,
us, like the way it got described to me was like, hey, come tell us what we should want that we don't know about yet. And like, when I
exactly.
tell my friends, like the phase two is like, $1.25 million. It's like free money. Like it's like an investor, except you're not giving any of the equity away. It's like, it doesn't even compute in their brains. And like all of a
Yeah,
sudden, like once they start to get it, they're like, oh my gosh, you're kidding. And then like if a phase three gets into phase three that gets into the millions, like the ability to grow the company that level, and you haven't even gone and done your fundraising, like holy
right.
cow. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yep,
that kind of a launch pad. I mean, because that there's such a hurdle to get from zero to something for most startups. And the idea of like,
exactly.
potentially million plus, it's not debt, it's not equity. I mean, it's such a huge benefit, but I think there's not enough startups that understand how to leverage it, how to take advantage, how to play that sport.
Yeah, and I think a part of the challenge is they're not sure where to go online. So, for example, many people don't know that the Small Business Administration has a series of events that they host where you can dial in and they'll tell you not only how to submit for one of these grants or multiple grants, but they actually will do webinars and walk you through different opportunities and who should apply and who shouldn't and what the limits are and what you should think about. They'll do workshops that will give you feedback on what you're writing. And that's tremendously helpful. I would say definitely take advantage of these because once you get government traction, you can now turn to the private sector and say, look, we've got this. And by the way, you have a need because we know you're in this sector, that sector, that sector, and we can solve these problems for you.
Yeah, I started listening to some of those this year, and I started listening to some of the AFWorks
Yeah.
webinars. And then I think like most of my friends don't know about PIA's Partnership Intermediary Agreement.
Agree.
Um,
Right.
so like I really like we started working with the folks at Parallax. I think their program is called Apex, and like it
Yeah.
was crazy to me as a business owner. It's like, okay, the government's going to pay this third party consulting firm to help me figure out how to get free money from the government. It's like,
Yeah.
so I think the person assigned to me, she's so great. She's either like an '04 or an '05, retired. Like this, this is like a legit Navy officer who can really talk, like help me understand what's going on and translate the language and the acronyms and like, and I wasn't paying for it. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's all free. It's out there. It's just making sure that people realize, hey, these are friendly front doors that you can go to ask for help and take advantage of these grants. Because at the end of the day, when you look at national security as a whole, a big part of that is economic security and setting a strong economic foundation here in the United States, as well as our allied partners. That means we're investing in small businesses that matter for the future. AI, definitely. Quantum, definitely. Fusion, definitely. High performance computers, semiconductors. I mean, I can go on. There are a lot of these areas that, I mean, AI and quantum in particular, where you have a first mover only advantage. And if you don't take that and win in that sector, and somebody else does, now they control the sector for the foreseeable future. It's a
Yeah.
big deal. So the government's very serious about how can we get the dollars into the hands of the teams and the tech people that need it the most. And so that's why you see all of these different projects coming up. I'm a big fan. I love what they're doing, and I feel like if we're doing a better job communicating to people where to go online to find help and to get the answers they need, these projects, these dollars will actually take off.
Yeah.
More people will be able to take advantage of them.
So I know we're closing in on time. Uh, what was one of the what was one of the coolest things about being chief technology officer of the innovation division for the entire Air Force?
That's a tough one. You know, the people I worked with were fantastic. And I think always, as I look back on my military career, it was the people that made the job. You had so many people that really just cared about making a positive difference for the nation, really cared about, granting a technology advantage. The other piece that I really enjoyed was working with these early stage startups. They're coming in with brilliant ideas. They're excited. They're getting up every morning and they're scrappy and they're like, let's get out there, let's make a difference, let's build something that matters. And you catch that energy, and that's why I'm still in this area because I love working with teams like that, and especially when you see the potential, you see where they're going, what they're building, and how it's going to have that outsized impact for everybody. That was the best part. I really really enjoyed being around the people and working with these incredible teams. Just incredibly fulfilling.
Okay, so then my next question is, what's one of your favorite things about not having those restrictions of being a government employee anymore with what you do?
So today, so one of the big things that I realized, and SoftWorks and AFWorks, we worked around this where we would go into areas in civilian clothes. But when I walked in as Lieutenant Colonel Snow, there were people in the room that would go quiet and they wouldn't talk and they wouldn't express their ideas. I didn't want that. I want to hear every idea. I don't care who you are, what your rank is, where you're from, because you never know where that next great idea is going to come from. So I would always kind of quietly get into the room, and sometimes I was in a Marvel t-shirt or something. Sometimes I, just civilian clothes, and people wouldn't know who I was, so they'd come up and talk to me. And I could learn so much by doing that. That's one of the big things where just being Jen Snow the civilian, JJ Snow the civilian now, has been tremendous because I can go out and talk to anybody and everybody, and there's no rank involved. And that's really opened a lot of doors. The other thing is, working inside a bureaucracy, there are certain processes and procedures that you have to follow. And it can be restrictive at times, especially for somebody as creative as I am. When you want to move fast with innovation, sometimes it can be frustrating inside of a bureaucracy. You can still do it, but it's a bit more of a challenge at times. I love having the freedom to innovate and to connect and to move the way I need to move on the outside. I'm still able to have a massive impact for the government, but I can do it faster and I can do it in a lot of different ways now. And it's really exciting to be in this next chapter. So I miss the military, but they set me up very well for what I'm doing today.
Too fun. Well, if people want to connect with you or follow you, is LinkedIn a good place, or what's best?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best place. Former Intel officer. I'm not really on social media, so JJ Snow on LinkedIn is great. I would just drop me a line there, and happy to connect. And if you've got a challenge or a problem you're trying to solve, and you think I can help, please reach out.
Great. Maybe to end here, what's one of the best pieces of advice you ever received?
I think the biggest one, and this was really early on in my career as a new lieutenant. Um, there were a couple. There were a couple that stand out, but the one that really stood out was do everything to the best of your ability, even when you think nobody's looking, because they may be. You don't know, but at the end of the day, your credibility, your reputation, that's everything. That's everything you have. It's what you take with you. It's what enters the door before you step into a meeting or onto a call. And when you get up in the morning and you can look yourself in the mirror, you've got that respect and you know that you've done everything you can, your very best. It's a good feeling. And that's the way I think, the military, especially the Air Force, taught us to live life. And that's the way my grandparents taught me to live life as well. So, yeah, I carry that lesson with me.
I feel like that's a mic drop. Like, I don't think that's a great ending. I don't think we can beat that.
Oh man, Jess, this was fun. There's so much more that we can catch up on, but yeah, this is super cool. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
No, no, I'm so glad you had time. Okay, bye, everyone.